Hello. Yo. How's it going? How you doing? How you doing? Huh? Great? There's only one person that's great? How you doing? Huh? Fine? We got a great and we got a fine. And we got a terrific. So how you doing? Huh? Great. All right. All right. There is a former mayor, short little guy. He used to say, "How I'm doing? How am I doing? How am I doing?" So how am I doing right now? Good. All right. All right. All right. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm not Ed Koch. Now this is a little bit of the fun song and dance. Hopefully you really enjoyed these very short 30 minutes. I can definitely tell that as a facilitator, I am not the most colorful version because I'm looking at team education over here, and they went through all the colors. Industry, wow. We didn't even get into the big post-it notes. Ben, I think, yeah. Wow, no. Okay, there we go. So we're going to go through all the different themes. Hopefully you will be doing a report back. Emily. Hey, Emily. Emily's going to be running around and doing the microphones. We have title slides, so we're essentially going to work our way around the room, and Emily's going to take the microphone to the different facilitators. Hopefully each team, either the facilitator or someone from the team is going to speak. We are going to try to do this within 30 minutes, but seeing how we're going over, you're not going to kill us, right? No. Not yet. Okay, great. So we're gonna be quick about this. All right. So to accessible infrastructure. Let's see. Hopefully, pull forward. Here's our problem. When we started off with accessible infrastructure, essentially we discovered that there are a lot more problems around accessible infrastructure, and it's really hard to group them. I forget your name. D really summed it up elegantly by pointing out that we had a number of causes and we had a number of effects around that we were pulling out, and that there are just a shitload of problems from the fact that there's this thing called the Empire. No. What is the subway? Yeah, there's a company that was formed after a great New York City fire, which has these tubes underground, and this is where the internet lives. It's also where what is that thing? Morse code, the telegraph cables, and then there's Edison's direct electrical current cables live, and these tubes under the streets are filled with things from the last 100 years. And we don't necessarily know what's in all of those tubes, but we keep on paying for these tubes to be filled with things. Google's running fiber for Link NYC. Verizon has run fiber for Fios. And we keep on paying for that, and we still don't seem to be getting the ability to live in that ubiquitous science fiction future that we were all promised with our jetpacks and flying cars. And so we have all of these different problems that range from physical infrastructure, like the fact that City Bike isn't even distributed fairly, or that there's transportation accessible issues like around pace, and that if you think bus service is bad, just wait until you can't even use the bus and you have to call the MTA to pick you up in a car. And so we really have a lot of problems. So we couldn't come up with very many solutions, but we were able to kind of like organize our solutions around 4 different areas. One is solutions around network and the fact that the city should be thinking about building not only a network, but enabling the system so that way we can go peer-to-peer and do community networks. So bring the pipe into the neighborhood and then allow us to network and mesh together. Issues around contracting, a lot of that oversight needs to happen, and we need to be thinking wisely about that type of contracting and those franchise agreements, and making sure that we don't pay for the shit that we're not getting. We need to be thinking about transportation and physical access to the infrastructure, and then thinking about other types of services around the network infrastructure that we can be doing. One of the solutions that's near and dear to my heart is making sure that everybody can be composting. I love composting. Composting is fun. I love playing with dirt. And then having some type of community oversight group or community technology oversight group, so that way we can be holding those powers accountable. Great. Anybody from the accessible network infrastructure want to talk at all? Final comments? No? Great. All right, we're going to get the microphone over to the education and lifelong learning.
Is this thing on? Can everybody hear me? Okay. So we came up with basically stating that the issues that we saw were wrapped around two things. One is access for everyone and for lifelong learning, and two is content that's available both for personal enrichment and curiosity, and for real skills that build like value and for job training. And so what we'd like to see is more increasing access, so that's more content, more availability, and more awareness. A lot of us, what we started to share is that we were aware individually of a lot of great programs and opportunities for learning in the city already, but one person knew something about it as a niche, and we wondered why it wasn't more publicly known. So just increasing awareness about what's already available, and not just increasing online and learning through technology, but also real connecting people in public spaces for person-to-person learning. Okay, is that enough?
Thanks. So yes, we talked about industry, employment, and economic mobility. Part of our discussion actually revolved around pretty much the first half of the session was pretty much defining it collectively, our vision of what economic mobility looks like. We thought that the terms industry and employment were kind of maybe could have been filler, and that the important part about, I guess, what we were trying to define was kind of touching upon the same things that was mentioned in the education group, access to certain kinds of resources, especially educational resources. So we defined economic mobility ultimately as the freedom to choose basically the kind of work you have. And, there's certainly the not having to worry about money aspect, but the more fundamental aspect of, having a lot of choice and freedom in how you do work, so that you can move up or down or laterally, however, without having to worry about really any type of economic ramifications. And so when we defined that, we sort of split that into a series of issues that we saw as all contributing to whether or not someone could be economically mobile. Some of these are freedom from chaos, or access to quiet spaces, which is ultimately quiet spaces in the implementation thereof, or we're seen as a solution to this. There's also technology, access to technology, transportation, and access to transportation, what that means for somebody in terms of getting to work and making appointments and these kinds of things, housing, healthcare, childcare, education, and then access to industry information and job information. So in jumping to solutions, the idea, there's several topics that came up. We put a lot of solutions there, and a lot of them kind of circled around certain things, like access to information through something like a job portal. So there's a few different instances where we talked about a central jobs hub where it would be very easy to find jobs in New York City. And you could also have it more kind of finely tuned so that you have a bot that would be able to interact with you in terms of guiding you through what could be a very intimidating process for a lot of people. So there is a human kind of centered design aspect to some of these solutions. Another popular topic that came up in the group was visualizing data. Not only access to data, but data tools like maps that score certain areas that are good or bad for certain things, like access to peace and quiet, access to certain kinds of jobs or transportation. So we found that there is, definitely several kind of key central solution, topics, and from those came kind of like a branching out of different related topics as well. Thanks.
I think there was some bit of overlap with what we came up, what came up in our discussions. There was this, there's the thought that without some kind of equity or everyone having access to the same kind of infrastructure, open government would be really hard. And that access includes access to data, being able to easily interact with it or visualize it, getting access to emails and communications that elected officials are sending out, access to the officials themselves. We talked about the bad contracts that the city has gotten into and what could be done to get us out of these bad contracts. There's talk of the Civic, the tools that Civic hackers build that are not being sort of used in a way that is most efficient by government officials sometimes, and a better collaboration would be nicer. The idea of standardizing data, the idea of having platforms that can have people collaborate and discuss more effectively than the social media platforms that we rely on. Did I miss something? Yeah, I think transparency, accountability, access to officials, more collaboration. Should I take it over?
Ben and I are going to tag team this one, but we had a really nice discussion about smarter communities, and kind of summing it up, it seems like we all agreed that there was a lot out there, but that there's a lot of data, there's a lot of people with a lot of good ideas, and there's a lot of like services out there, but these things aren't connecting. So we talked about access, which is something everyone has been talking about tonight. There's no access to the resources out there. And then there is kind of a lack of resources for certain things. There is the inability to be an effective participant in the civic space, whether that's not knowing about community groups that are already doing good work or not knowing about resources that are available. And then there is an issue of accountability, both with people organizing in the tech space, but also with the city as well. And some solutions were to increase education, very broad strokes here, make better community facilitation. So when you're bringing these pieces together, making sure that it's actually inclusive and equitable and accessible to all. And do you have anything to add, Ben? Do you guys have anything to add? All right, cool. That's about it.
Great. Give yourself a round of applause, everybody. Woohoo!
It's very broad.
We are at the witching hour of 9 o'clock, but I want to quickly ask: was there anything else that was missing? Is there once again? This is kind of the Quaker moment. Like what was being said that hasn't been said. What do you feel that needs to be said in these closing moments, or potentially even just a question?
So it's been brought up that there was quite a lot of overlap between some of these areas, and I wonder, in terms of the integration and the overlap between different ideas, what's the expected process around figuring those things out?
So that actually kind of goes into the next step phase, which is we're still in the ideation phase. We want to figure out how these things. We're in the ideation phase. we will then move to the online portion. So we want to get even more ideas, and we hopefully will be able to see where things are intersecting and hopefully find more intersectionality. And then in spring, we'll start trying to bring them all together. We have yet to determine how we're going to bring them together, but as this is a community-led process, hopefully we'll form some type of group that will be able to coalesce those ideas and then write a narrative that will be able to link all of it together, hopefully using the 4 values, maybe even adding an additional value if they see that that's an opportunity. But we need to figure out exactly how we're going to bring all of the ideas in lace them to each other. So we want all of the ideas to come out first. And it's great that we're already seeing the interconnection between them all, because that means that we're at least moving, I think, in a right direction. But maybe that's my biased opinion. So microphone has to go to the individual so.
How do ours in Beta NYC external stakeholders affect Beta NYC's roadmap? And like, where does this go from here with external stakeholders, like the other communities we're talking about, the city that runs the infrastructure, the state, et cetera?
Okay, so there's been a small group of us that have been meeting pretty regularly, almost weekly, to start talking about this process. This time has been informed by the V-Taiwan process, which is a deliberative process, deliberation, discussion, facilitation, conversation process. Darshana, did I articulate that accurately, more or less? Yeah, okay. In that process, they talk about identifying stakeholders and then trying to drive greater clarity through these different issues. And so right now, we're almost at identifying the different stakeholders and trying to figure out how that will move forward. And so through this process, we're identifying those stakeholders. Hopefully, we're identifying new stakeholders. That way, we can have deeper conversations and have follow-up conversations that will extract very pointed solutions that we can articulate in the roadmap and then use that as part of our advocacy moving forward. So this is still, once again, we're still in this ideation phase where we're just taking what we've done in the past, kind of dusting it off, hopefully adapting it to where we are now, and that way we can be tack and be agile about how we want to extract explicit statements. That way we can bring that to council over and the administration moving forward. But we don't know what that looks like, and so if you want to participate, we have an open Slack channel in the Beta NYC Slack. You can come find any one of the facilitators afterward, and we will bring you into the hive mind. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay, great. Can we get the microphone to the other side of the room? Emily.
Are there any plans about actually doing some deeper dives and research to scope out the problems before we get to solutions, just so that we can understand scope and impact that we're having? Just curious about what's the plans around that.
Scope and impact of the problems. Yeah. Which there are many.
Yes.
Right. And that's something like, yes, you can help us figure that out by helping us join the organizing team.
Okay.
So that would be my plug for that. What? Any other questions, comments? No? Okay. So takeaways. Last time we did this, it was much smaller communities, and so it was very nerd-based, which is why the 34 ideas were very, they were unique. I think we've tried to expand ourselves, which then puts us in this conundrum of that we're now seeing much larger problems, and it's really hard to sometimes bring the funnel down. We wanted to kind of like open the funnel back up again to see what are the new ideas that we wanted to generate, and maybe kind of like bring things back down. So we're trying to make this process very open. We hope to be using this type of process and some of these practices moving forward. We want to use this as an example to bring about a practice that can be used within community boards around other problems. And the V-Taiwan process has demonstrated kind of something that's replicable, but replicable for tech issues. We're trying to mix technology and in-person policy orientation conversations, so it's very geeky. And so we're using the updating of the People's Roadmap to experiment with that. To address your issue and then hopefully to generate more ideas, we need you to hop into we're going to turn around these ideas, but in the meantime, if there is something that you are very explicit about, a solution or an idea or some type of thing that you want added to the People's Roadmap, get to talk and hop on Talk. Join us on Slack and join us, the facilitators, and see how we can kind of bring this next step even clearer. Those are the next 2 actionable steps that we can have. We're hoping to get all of these post-it notes digitized within the next few weeks, hopefully before the new year. And if there's something that you feel that your community can add to School of Data, we're looking for proposals so that way you can bring these types of issues to School of Data as a panel conversation. And I just want to say thank you for coming out and helping us update the roadmap. Where's the last slide? We want you to help us attend the future workshops. We will be looking for people to help us write this. We need feedback on the workshop. Darshana, is the Slido? Okay, so if for the last and final thing, if you can get back to that Slido, there's a last summary survey. Does everybody remember what the Slido was? Yeah? Everybody remember what the hashtag was? Roadmap_Civic Hall. And there's if you could just do that, like just take the next 3 minutes to fill out that survey, that would be helpful. It's not on the handout, but oh, I should have put one at the very end. sli.do. And I'm reminded that we also have the results from our Brooklyn and Queens workshops on Talk, on the roadmap section on Talk. So you can see what Brooklyn and Queens have already said. And we will then be able to add Manhattan as a summary to that. And if you have any friends in the Bronx or in Staten Island, we are also looking for community partners in Bronx and Staten Island to bring this workshop to those other communities. So come find one of the facilitators, and we'd love to talk about Bronx and the Bronx and Staten Island. So great. So thank you. If you could help us help Civic Hall by finding those little empty red containers of dead dinosaurs. and putting them in recycled locations. If you have not turned in your postcard, we would greatly appreciate handing those postcards to one of the facilitators so that way we can postmark that for you. And if you want to hand back any pens or Post-it notes, we will gladly recycle them and reuse them. So thank you. And we hope to see you online. So yeah, thanks. Thank you.